So today, what we're going to talk about is how to build and scale a world-class outbound program. So we're going to start real quick with outbound in 2025. So what's the current state of outbound? I'll introduce our two guests here in a moment. And then what we're going to do is talk about 7 key strategies to build a world-class outbound motion. And for those of you asking in the chat, we will send out the recording afterwards. So if you have questions, you can either drop it into the chat. There's a Q&A button at the bottom. We would like to make this as interactive as possible. Before we dig in, I want to thank one of our sponsors, Orem. If you're ever sitting at your desk and making calls and wondering, hey, is this worth doing because hardly anyone picks up? I'd like to be a little bit more efficient. Orem is a great tool for that. For any of you guys running distributed remote sales teams, which most of you are, they have a virtual sales call floor that I find really effective just for replicating that call center-like vibe virtually. So go make sure to check out Orem. Our guests today, we have Diana Gates. Diana and I worked together during the time that we trained a bunch of the SDRs at Shopify. She's head of sales development for North America at Shopify. And if I do say so myself, Diana, you run a top-notch sales development team. It's one of the best that we've seen. Wasim was on our previous webinar. Like
Yes,
he was one of the first people that I met on your team and just like top-notch. So it's good to have you here.
I appreciate it. Excited to be here.
We have Kyle Norton. I'm just getting to know Kyle. Talked to Kyle a couple times. He's CRO at owner.com. Kyle, you should also give a shout out to your podcast. That's mostly how I found out about you. But just putting out really, really good content on his journey at owner.com and growing the sales org. And then also just interviewing and collaborating with a lot of other senior sales executives to get their insights as well. So Kyle, great to have you on. And where can people go to check out your podcast?
The revenue leadership podcast.com or any podcast app. I personally love the Snipped app. It's like my new obsession, SNIPD, because you get like AI summaries and you can take clips as you listen. I'm not like a partner or paid to promote. I just love it. And I hope they're successful because I like the app. So use Snipped for it. Thanks, Hadi.
Love it. And then if you're just coming across our stuff for the first time, my name is Jason Bay. At Outbound Squad, we primarily do sales training focused on top of the funnel. So if it's SDR teams, AE teams, AMs are being asked to do a lot of outbound into existing customer accounts. We've worked with some really great companies, so make sure to check us out as well. So without further ado, let's get to the content. I think a lot of you are here because you are either on a team or running a team that wants to do one of the following that you see on the screen, right? Maybe you want to make an outbound pivot because you've relied way too much on inbound up to this point. Maybe you've done PLG and you want to be more sales-led. You want to move up market. Some of those executives don't exactly fill out demo requests and that sort of stuff in the enterprise. Could be cross-selling, expanding, wanting to convert more of your MQLs, whatever it might be. These are a lot of what our customers, like the ones you see on the screen, want to do. So I think the first thing that I want to get into with you two is this question that I get asked this a lot, even on sales calls when teams come inbound. They're asking, like, outbound is so hard. Is it still worth the effort? Because this is what they share with me. Hey, we have less than a 1% reply rate to emails. It feels like no one picks up the phone anymore. And the anecdote people always give is, I don't pick up the phone, is what they say. And then for the reps that do get pickups, they have a very, very low conversion rate into a meeting. So I would kick this first question your way, Kyle. Is outbound harder than it has been in the last 2 or 3 years? Is it still worth the effort? I know you guys do a lot of this at Owner, but what's your sense on state of outbound?
Outbound's always been hard and it's always changing. Business is always changing. And oftentimes I say this sort of tongue in cheek, but like, did you expect it to be easy? Like, no, like you're building a business, you're building startup, you're trying to bring in revenue. Like why would you ever assume that this was going to be an easy endeavor? Because I think we just need to embrace the fact it's like, okay, connect rates are going down, email response rates are going down. Okay, that's just play the game as it is on the field. and you need to problem solve and get creative and think about new ways to get the job done, because that's what we get paid to do. Like, that's why these roles pay so handsomely, because they're challenging and accretive for the company. So yeah, maybe things are getting harder. I haven't necessarily found that to be my personal experience. But also, like, we're doing a bunch of like interesting and innovative stuff all the time, whether it was being a very early adopter of sales acceleration tools, or solving data challenges, or building in-house tooling, or now it's AI. Like, that's the cost of doing business. So just embrace it. Like, get out of, like, don't ever, I think the biggest message here is just like, get out of the woe is me mindset. Oh, it's harder, low connect rates, email. Like, dude, it's always going to be that way. So just like, time to get after it, time to problem solve.
I think there was this perception that there was an easy button, so to speak, because like we kind of overwhelmed everything with volume when all of these cadencing and sequencing tools came out. The efficiency was like extremely low in terms of like conversion rate, but we could just overwhelm with volume, and we had the illusion that it felt easier, I think. Diana, though, you've been running the team for quite a while over on the Shopify side. What are you seeing?
I think to Kyle's point, like, it's always been difficult, and the game is changing now. I think with the introduction of AI and the way that we have been leveraging it, obviously drives efficiency, but the game has just changed. So it's not like AI does X, Y, Z, and now the human element is only capable of doing the rest. It's how do you use AI? Like, the game is fundamentally changing. So when we think about Outbound at Shopify, or just in any other tech organization, you have to level up your skill set. When you find that folks are not responding, figure out new ways to break into accounts, figure out ways to get creative. We were just talking about door-to-door sales. There are going to be ways today that you stand out that you wouldn't have 2 years ago. And it might be just going back to the basics of your sales foundation, but the game has changed, but it should be encouraged that it's harder. Like, that's how you win, is by learning and acquiring new skills. If that's not a part of your game plan, it's just not going to be a place where you find success.
Yeah, it's like you have to actually be decent skill-wise at Outbound, I think, for it to work based on the conversion rates, especially pickup rates. You're going to talk to fewer people, but you need to be better at converting them. So let's dig into some of the pieces of the equation here. And I think one of the first things that we want to talk about is measurement. So let me share my screen again. I think the key thing here is that, like, you can't really troubleshoot or scale if you don't have proper measurement. Like there's a lot of organizations that we've worked with that are very large that can't pull basics around like activity, like what's actually happening. They couldn't tell you what the pickup rate is on a call. They couldn't tell you what the open and reply rates and all of that kind of stuff are. So it's a really, really big thing to make sure that you have like basic leading and lagging indicators in place that you're measuring. And I'll give you two a second to kind of look at this. Diana, I mean, this is one of the first things that stuck out to me when we were working together is you're like, hey, look at this badass report that I have. And you kind of walked me through everything. How do you think about reporting and metrics? And is there anything that you see here on the screen that you would like, hey, yeah, you definitely need to do that, or I don't really track that, or here's some stuff that I would add? Like, what are some of the basic things that you want to measure to determine the performance of your org?
Data is everything. And I think like that's typically where when you think about coaching and building up coaches, you have to give them the trends and the data in order to conduct an analysis and decide where and how they're going to go and execute. Like, orienting yourself with data to drive decisions is critical. And I think that's a big component of finding success in Outbound. You start off with those basics: total calls, total number of activities to meetings booked. And then as you start to build this into your motion, your data needs to be enhanced as you grow. So now we're looking at conviction time within cold calls. Is it within the first 10 seconds? Is it 30 seconds? Is it 60 seconds? And then how do you manipulate that talk track now that you understand your opener is effective? So it's taking that first pass at total number of activities, total number of emails, dissecting where the opportunity is, whether it's talk track or your messaging. Are you writing based on the right persona or the value prop? it then shifts as you enhance what data you have access to and how you coach your leaders to drive results around those things. And then you start to get into a place where you can really get critical with the data. But I would say everything on here, I think, is foundational to finding success when you're scaling an outbound team.
You said something about conviction. Is that like, are you measuring, Catherine dropped something into the chat, like the number of conversations over a certain length of time? Is that what?
A little bit more aggressive than that is measuring sentiment and tone in the cold call based on the number of seconds that have been completed. So we'll look at conviction, of course, looking at like the duration of the call, but now measuring within that call, where does tone and conviction happen? Do you capture them in the first 15 to 20 seconds? Is it 30 to 60? And is it 120 plus? And then how do you start to measure against that from a objection handling? What's your pitch? What's your reverse pitch? And how do you adjust based on those different metrics within the cold call?
Got it. Kyle?
Yeah, I think the challenge people have is everybody knows data is important and they wish they had data, but the challenge is your reps don't give you that data because either you have an engagement problem, people don't care to do the thing that is challenging in order to help the business. And we can talk about solving for engagement later. Or it's a systems issue and you haven't made it easy for your reps to give you that data. And so like I just shared a sample sentiment and disposition chart that you can borrow in your business. And you have to make it easy when your reps are logging their calls through Orem or if it's SalesLoft or whatever it is, and quickly give you an idea of what happened on that call, and quickly pick the sentiment. Did you connect with a decision maker, with a gatekeeper? Was it no answer? And then what happened? And if that is just a mess, if your sentiments and dispositions are a mess and they're confusing, then you'll never get anything valuable there. So how can you solve the business process problem? That I think is where people get stuck a lot of the time.
Love it. So making sure that one, you're tracking the right reporting, and then two, check out that Google Drive link that we dropped into the chat there. There are quite a few dispositions actually that I don't see a lot of companies using. And sometimes it's simple stuff like, is this the wrong person? Is it the wrong phone number, et cetera? Like not having some of those basic things to like make sure reps don't call them again in the future, I think is really big. What you're seeing here on the screen, this is like an advanced version of like a breakdown you should have for every single rep. One of the companies that we worked with that saw really good success with their frontline leaders and being able to really problem diagnose around their coaching was every rep they could see if, hey, is this an effort problem? Are they not sending enough emails, making enough calls? Is it an efficiency problem? They have trouble getting people to connect over the phone, reply, et cetera. And then even breaking down their conversion rate of how good are they on the phone at getting meetings versus email. Another metric that I like there on the very far right is a rep's effectiveness. We called this the rep's load. Back in the day, it was the load you carry on your back, the amount of effort that it takes to book a meeting. And we'll share this. This is in Excel for the people commenting. We'll share this deck out so that you guys have it too. But there's a really good indicator there on the number of activities it takes to book a meeting, because that's a really good way to see how stressed out that someone might be, or how likely they are to not want to do their job anymore. So having a dashboard like this is really, really money. We don't need to spend a long time on this because we could honestly spend a whole hour talking about it, but I have to ask you two about attribution, and Kyle, I'll ask you first. What are your thoughts on attribution? Like I see so many scenarios, and probably 2/3 of our clients are arguing back and forth on whether marketing should get credit for something versus SDRs versus the Salesforce stuff. How do you think about attribution?
Very much a waste of time, in my opinion. I do want to understand what channels are effective and where I should be allocating resources and capital. But at the same time, first touch, last touch, multi-touch, weighted attribution, like it the is it sales or is it marketing thing is irrelevant. It's never just sales or just marketing.
Yeah.
Marketing is in charge of building a brand and a following and trust at scale, and sales is in charge of doing like targeted outreach with effort and craft. And so I think that's usually like an organizational design problem or a trust problem internally. Demand gen reports into me directly here. That hasn't always been the case in my career. And even when it hasn't reported to me, like it hasn't really been a battle. I've had battles with marketing, but it hasn't been a battle. It hasn't been a battle for a while since I've worked with great marketers. And so it's just a trust thing. And it if your CEO is like playing this game where, he's allocating resources between the two and you're spending a bunch of time arguing over who gets credit, it's probably not a great use of organizational effort and mind share. So I would just say, like, assume that marketing is going to generate a bunch of leads that then BDRs are going to touch at some future point, and that's part of their job. And we think about LTV CAC by channel in a bunch of buckets, like new fresh inbound, formers, cold outbound, partnerships. And we do look at those channels, but we're not pitting them against one another, because like this entire ecosystem should work together pretty cohesively.
I think the only thing that I would add there, and I think Kyle, you touched on it, is once it's pipeline, great. Like that is the desired outcome, and we really want those closed won deals. But I do care deeply about the recipe that led to that opportunity. I care less about who was the last person to interact with it or who created it. But once we start to understand how marketing and sales is collaborating to drive those results, that's when my care for attribution really becomes a focus. But I don't care about who gets the credit. I care what it took to get to that opportunity and to build that pipeline.
So how would you guys separate the difference between cold outbound and inbound? What's the difference between those?
Well, I have two different functions. And like fresh inbound is basically people filling out forms that are responding to direct response marketing. Google meta ads, could be like webinar or CTV.
Is there a time period? Is it like within 90 days? Like how do you determine if it's fresh or not?
I think it was 90 days and we've changed it to maybe 30. But again, like marketing, if it's come through marketing at some point, it's valuable. And I bake that assumption into how I think about marketing spend. Yeah. Like if marketing generates a lead and then a BDR calls it 4 months later and rebooks it, even though you might put it in the BDR ledger, it still tracks back. Like I still, in our reporting and in how we measure and think about the business, that is still a lead that came into the system through marketing. And therefore I need to consider that when I think about how much we're allocating dollars to marketing. And it's not like a who gets credit thing, but it's if I have a number of dollars to allocate across these channels, where do I put those dollars? And we have a pretty like seamless collaboration across those teams right now. And because what you end up getting is like, if there's a fight about it, then like think it's something we're doing right now. So we were behind on the number midway through March. And so we're like, okay, time to problem solve and get creative. So let's instead of waiting 14 days to let outbound BDRs touch inbounds, let's just like, as soon as they go through that SDR cadence, they're going to immediately get to a BDR. And does that mean that it's like not marketing generated anymore? No, like I don't care. I just want the pipeline, and we'll reconcile a bunch of it as we go through the reporting at the end of the month.
I think that's one thing that we do a little bit differently is we consolidated the two roles, Kyle. So when an SDR is outbounding to an account, if it comes inbound, they are just as excited at the opportunity to convert that inbound lead. So that has been really, really helpful for us, is just splitting the two things and just making it a single role, one single function. qualifying those leads, but also being in control and being motivated to keep those accounts warm.
And this is a rant for another time, but I never understood why, like, the progression would be the first job in the sales org is inbound SDR, then you graduate to an outbound SDR. It's like, okay.
Well, because outbound's harder.
I know, but you graduate to outbound, like you get rewarded for doing a good job by doing a harder job and getting no inbound leads to work with. I don't know. I just never understood that.
But that's a mindset thing. Like
Yeah.
we should at all points in our lives be trying to graduate to a harder challenge. New levels beget
For
new
sure.
devils. And so
For sure.
I think because if your pursuit is mastery, you need resistance to develop mastery. And so if you're just doing inbound forever, it's too easy. It's like trying to get huge biceps lifting 15-pound weights. Like you can't do enough repetitions to build muscle mass. And so you need a harder form of resistance. Well, cold outbound is that harder form of resistance. Being an AE is our harder form of resistance.
For sure. We could spend a bunch of time talking on that too. So let's dig into strategy. So this is the piece that I'm pretty excited about. This is where we spend a lot of our time. I think one of the big problems is a lot of organizations when they're going outbound, especially for the first time, is they try to be all things for all buyers. Hey, we have all of these different things that we do. We can sell all of these different solutions. We solve all of these different problems. Or my favorite, we're industry agnostic. The thing that we're always trying to get people to see is that, like, the pipeline, like, we really want it to look more like a martini glass. Like, outbound is really about, like, where are the good opportunities and how can we go way deeper on those opportunities and filter out some of the stuff that's not as good. And I'll give you some examples of this in action. I can't mention the company name, but we worked with a client recently who generated the most amount of pipeline that they've ever generated on the SDR team. It was 3.12 mil to 8.4. And one of the big things that they did is they just said, yeah, we sell to 11 industry verticals, but these 3 is where we win 80% of our business. We're only going to have the SDRs do that. Hyper segmentation is another strategy that worked really well for a client of ours, Armis. They just said, hey, there's 2 enterprise verticals that we sell into. Like, we're just going to ignore all of those. We're going to put our AEs on those accounts. We're going to target the BDRs on those accounts. And this is such a simple exercise that I feel like is just a huge missed opportunity around how we segment around industry, how we narrow personas. So GoGuardian's the companies that sells ed tech. But again, they looked at who are the key buyers that are participating in our closed won deals, that if we don't get them, we don't win those deals. Like, let's just focus all of our outbound effort on getting those folks to the table. So I got one more thing that I want to share, but before I do, I wanted both of your takes, and Diana, will kick the question your way first. How do you think about the strategy element of, like, where to help reps point their efforts and how to help them prioritize that piece? Because that's a really big part of the strategy.
I think it's so, one of the mindsets that I have is if an SDR is not able to make their decision of what they do next within the next 15 seconds, your system has failed them. They should know exactly where to go without needing to make massive business decisions. I feel that way about picking up a cold call. Like, don't do 2 hours of research for a minute cold call. That feels chaotic. So helping them identify, like, who is your targeted list within your book of business, and helping them even start with a book of business, the tiering, what goes into that criteria? How do we identify a tier 1? What does that look like? And give them the tools to understand who our ICP is. What are the personas within that business that are going to care to talk to us about the impact that our platform can offer them? So I think for me, it starts off as, like, define your ICP and make sure that they understand that to their core, and then help them identify within their books of business and within their account lists, how do they then build targeted lists based on that? Is it based on specific industries? Is it based on persona? Is it size of business? But those are all individual lists within their book of business. So it's helping them directionally understand who, what, where, and why.
Are there any kind of golden nuggets that you guys have found, or examples that you could share of, like, hey, we had RevOps run this report on closed won or closed lost deals, or meetings we set that turned into pipeline? Are there any nuggets that you would direct someone to, like, look for outside of, hey, who hops on these calls on these closed won deals? Who is the first meeting typically with? What industry is this account in? Are there any other things that are maybe more nuanced than that?
You want to take every input criteria of what an account or a person can look like, and then just run a regression on it. So we've built a machine learning model that does this, and which is the like most fulsome way to do it. But you could do this more manually, where you say, okay, these are the elements of an account. It could be the industry sector, company size, the stuff that they've mentioned on their earnings calls, or the growth velocity. Like you as a business sort of know what your like best accounts look like. At League, we sold into HR, and we would always joke that if we could run a LinkedIn scrape of HR leaders that wore tech fleece hoodies and didn't wear blouses, like that would be our ICP, because we wanted forward-thinking HR leaders, which is not synonymous with that industry. Sorry to any HR people on the call. But like, what makes a good buyer, and then are you enriching every account or lead with that information so that then you can run a regression or a correlation on those criteria? Because you may think it's like, oh yeah, company size is really important. Like big companies like to buy us, but then you run a regression or just like a correlation between company size and probability to win or probability to progress stage, and you find that the correlation is like very minimal. And so you can stress test this. And so I talk ad nauseum about the importance of data. It's the foundation for everything. I'll link my SaaStr talk, where I go pretty deep into like the details of how we do it. But we have two different machine learning models for likelihood to buy and the size of the estimated ACV of the deal. That would be the best way to do it. Go get time from your data science team or your biz ops team to do it, or else almost nothing you do on top of your BDR team will really get you to the proper economics. If 30, 40, 50% of the time your BDRs are calling leads that are like not in your ICP, they're like okay, but not great. 20% of your leads are directors, but really like you have to talk to a VP or a C-suite to like get a deal done or really like generate a meaningful op. Like you'd be shocked when you do this analysis of the leads and accounts that your BDRs are touching of like what they're spending time on. And it needs to be centralized. Like you have to have your RevOps and data ops teams own this. Don't let your BDRs do the lead research. Like that's a path to nowhere, in my opinion.
Yeah. Let's keep going. So upgrading the offer, this is something I'm really big on right now, is how are we rethinking the thing that we are giving the buyer, the prospective buyer, in return for their time? And this is something I thought you guys do so well at Shopify, is like every rep is trained to like actually, like, especially for some of the larger enterprise, folks, it's like, dude, you can experience the brand. Like there's a website audit tool that you guys have that like automatically pulls like load time on the site compared to like 3 or 4 other industry peers. Like, do you want to talk a little bit more about that, Diana? Because I think like being able to come to the table, and I have multiple examples of this I'll share with everyone in the audience, of like, how do you just make it more enticing to meet with you besides just getting a demo of your solution?
I think like one thing that our SDRs believe across every segment is the value that they bring to the conversation. So they are not there just to book a meeting. They understand our product to each scale, that each product at Shopify within our suite will drive value to their team. So something that we've been doing as of recently is this concept of a hyper audit. How do you go to a prospect and help them understand the value that our platform will bring beyond the experience that they provide to their customer? So understanding load speed. And we are now like purchasing items from these businesses so that they understand, like, we care deeply about the first click to the delivery. So I have SDRs going in and buying products off of our prospect site. They will then also film what the experience is of getting that delivered and what type of information, how can we help you fill the gaps from your first click to last click? So when they show up to that call, this is not a pitch. This is, how can I learn more about your business so that you can understand the value that we can bring to the table? I think that it's like critically important that they get something out of it. So we've been designing these like digital experiences, similar to this, where a prospect shows up with maybe 10 other folks in their industry or in their vertical. To Kyle's point, like who wants to be in the room with whom, and what are they going to learn from each other? That isn't just a pitch about Shopify. Like we don't need to be the topic of discussion. We need our merchants' business and the value that they bring and the customer experience that they're looking to provide to lead that conversation. And that's been something we've been doing a ton of.
100%.
And so it's interesting because Jason, you and I are starting to get to know each other only recently, but we use a lot of the same language. Like you're saying, upgrade the offer. At the end of our cold call framework, it's not set a next step or call to action, which would be traditional language. It is the last part of our scripting is offer of value. What's the offer of value that you can share with the customer to get them to come? That. And so the thing is, it can't be dumb and cringy and like a sales trick. This is what people get wrong. They're like, come for a free consultation. And then you start ripping discovery questions and you then just pitch the crap out of them for 10 minutes. It like fundamentally, you have actually done yourself a fairly significant disservice because the first interaction with your brand is a lie. And that seems like squishy and soft. It's like, oh, that doesn't really matter. I just like need to say what I got to say to get them on a call. But I can't, as a buyer, somebody who buys a lot of GTM tech and has bought like a bunch of stuff over the years, it takes a long time for me to recover from like a bad bait and switch because it just like, okay, well, this is how you operate as a company. So somebody is allowing this to happen. And so my call out here is, if you're going to try to hook people with a compelling offer of value, make sure that you actually deliver that on that call. And so that's why we've taught our AEs to know quite a bit about digital marketing, so they can do a full breakdown of somebody's current digital marketing presence, and they can actually fix a bunch of stuff on their own if they wanted. And that's an important part of our demo. And you have to put in the work to figure out like what is the thing that's valuable for people. And this goes right back to Challenger, the largest ever study of sales that had ever been done. When it was done, what's the first part of the Challenger methodology? Teach, tailor, take control. It's teach, but it has to be legitimate teaching. So spend the time, instead of like on cold call craft, spend the time on figuring out like what's actually valuable for your AEs to do on that first call, and then your conversion rates will get better because people will be legitimately excited about it.
Yep. I'm going to give you guys a couple of more ideas on what that offer could be. So if you're not selling Shopify or owner.com, where you can go onto a website, let's say, and see, there's a couple of other things. This requires some help from marketing. But one of our clients, Simpler, what I thought that was so badass they did is their marketing worked with a third party to like mystery shop 200 plus e-com businesses. So imagine I give you a call, Diana, and say, hey, it's Jason from so-and-so. Was just on yours and a few of your competitors' sites and noticed that your load time was 3 times longer, or your response time via chat was 8 hours, or I sent an email to your support team and it took 24 hours to get a response. Like they were able to compare some of that stuff with like actual data. And like, it's the just ultimate cold call opener when you can do that. Path Robotics, this is a company that sells a very technical automated welding solution. Their SDRs were really good at selling what I call the blind date. So it was, hey, Kyle, I'm actually going to put you in touch with Diana. She's got about 8 years of experience working with operations professionals like yourself in a manufacturing environment. And we're working with companies like X, Y, and Z. We're going to show you how they're automating some of those really hard to automate parts. It's like, that's all it took. Just like the person, like pitch and sell the person's expertise that they're going to be meeting with if you're an SDR setting up a meeting for an AE. Okay, let's keep moving. So messaging. All right, we're going to have to move a little fast through this one. I think with messaging, I believe, and I'm curious what you two think, I think that organizations provide way too little guidance to reps. I think they're fearful of using scripts. it's like a bad word in the in the sales work, right? Kyle, what's your take? I know you have a philosophy around this, but what is your take on talk tracks, scripts, templates, giving stuff to reps to say versus letting them kind of do their own thing? Is there a happy medium in there somewhere? Like, what's your take on scripting?
Scripts are cool. Everybody should have a script. You should try as hard as you can to keep your reps on script. I stole this line from Katie. You can let them color outside the lines and innovate, but they have to imitate before they innovate. That's like a really big piece of it. So scripting is super critical. And I'll share something slightly different on scripting here. The important part of a good script, in my opinion, is like, what is your core positioning? What is your core belief about the market? And how do you make it really simple for a prospect and a customer to understand if they have an alignment of worldview with you or do not? Because so this comes from Mike Maple's book, Pattern Breakers. What I want to do, and this is all the way from product marketing down to the cold call on into the demo, the proposal, this idea of I'm trying to force choice, not comparison. Comparison is my owner is better than our competitors because we have better SEO, we have better conversion rates, we're the better product. Customers can't figure that out. They have, because I'm going to say it and my competitors are going to say it. So they just end up in this paralysis because they don't know who to believe. And ultimately they just default to the status quo. That would be a comparison trap. And really what I want to do is I want to force the customer to make a choice. So restaurant owners choose owner because they understand that they are willing to sacrifice some choice and flexibility because owner is a more opinionated product in exchange for having a proven system that works out of the box that you will have to do much less effort to get incredible results. And because our customers' websites all look much more similar, they're structured in a familiar way, we can run A/B tests and actually understand with statistical significance what changes actually drive incremental results. And then we scale those winning experiments across every single customer that works with us. And so now the choice architecture there is you could have a super fancy custom site with your own fonts and spinning pictures and video and all this crap. That if you believe that brand is the most important thing and creativity is the most important thing with your digital presence, then I'll tell people go use Bento Box. They've got way more stuff and control. You have to hire a designer; it'll cost you $5,000, but like you can do it, or just use Owner. It works out of the box. You do less work, you make more money, and it's your choice. Like what do you want to what business philosophy do you want to opt into? Now on a cold call, you can get somebody's attention, simplify the choice architecture for them, and the right customers can opt into that next step and they'll opt in at a much higher rate, or they can opt out because they're like, no, like I was a digital marketer. I'm a graphic designer. I have all this stuff. Like my brand is everything that needs to be represented. Awesome. They can opt out of the process. We don't waste any time. And everything starts moving faster.
The choice architecture piece, I think, is so big, right? Reducing cognitive load for someone to help them easily make a yes or no, a very binary decision, I think is big. Diana, there's something that you do. I think one of the things that we talked about, we have this idea around assembling a messaging team.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys do this at Shopify? I remember you had something like this, I think, because this is one of the first workshops we do is, hey, let's get everyone on the same page, which, by the way, if you're watching this, you need to have something like you see on the screen for each of your personas. And you need to build this with your very best reps and the people that really understand them inside and out. Like, what are their priorities, current solutions, problems, aspirations, et cetera. We did this with a client and saw really good results, as you see on the screen. But I remember you saying something at Shopify too, where you have like people on the team that are sort of like the people in charge of the messaging and like kind of owning it. Do you want to share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think like once you start to identify like your SDR strengths and weaknesses and what their goals are, that's where we start to allocate what's your role within the team. So having a messaging team is critical for success. They are the thought leaders in the room. They're going to be the ones that are also giving peer feedback more often. But it's so important that as you find those folks who understand our ICP, are likely our more tenured SDRs, they start to drive up these like proven templates that we know are going to work, and then we deploy it across the rest of the team. But there's accountability and ownership to actually look at the results beyond our managers. And I think that that's where we find a ton of success on a player level is our SDRs are now inclined to go in and look at the metrics and understand, hey, I built this. And is it as successful with this rep? Or what is that sort of nuance that this rep brings to the table? And then how are we adapting against those best practices? So it gives us this opportunity to have extreme ownership on the rep level beyond the manager. So when we run a campaign, we have a single SDR per segment, per line of business that is the messaging person who will meet with marketing and come up with the messaging and then be the one who actually deploys it to the rest of the segment. So there's extreme ownership associated with that. And then they start to understand like, what is the data and why is it important? And then how do I then coach with my manager on how to get better in adopting those best practices? But they start to understand this test and measure, which as they graduate into account executives is now a part of their foundation for success. And they're not just stuck to a single template. They have this opportunity to iterate with purpose based on what they are seeing and hearing and the feedback that they get from their customers. So that messaging team, I think, is really, really important. And we start to find the folks who are ready to move on through their SDR career as the people who are raising their hand to be that person through every new campaign that we adopt.
Yeah. How do you treat?
I actually,
go ahead, Kyle.
I don't like, I find it's not that helpful having reps involved. They don't know enough about the psychology and craft. And so I've found it to be a distraction. It's interesting to have them in the room so they feel more attached to the outputs.
Yep.
Yeah. But I've generally found that the insight, as much as I would like it to be, is like not that good. So if you're gonna bring reps into it, just know that you're gonna try to make them feel involved and likely have to throw most of it out because they don't understand the psychology, the behavioral economics of it all. And until you can do that, I don't think you can write good messaging. I'm a bit of a messaging freak, though. I have strong opinions about it.
We're going to keep moving. There's we're going to share this deck at the end with you guys. It's got a couple of more ideas around like this shift from product to customer voice. Customer snippet bank, I think, is really important too. Like having ready-made customer stories that are 2-3 sentences long with logo, first name basis, kind of thing is really important as well. Fourth thing I want to talk about is culture. We're going to spend a ton of time on this because, again, we could spend a whole hour just on this topic, but I have a very strong opinion that most humans are not fit for outbound. Like what you see on the graph here is just rejection rates across other areas of life. And right now you have a higher percentage chance of making it into Harvard than getting a response to your cold email. That's how hard it is for most people.
25% of people get their marriage proposal rejected. That is rough.
It's rough. Yeah, I'm surprised it's not higher, honestly. But the the culture piece, I think there's this like right person, right seat, how leadership participates in this, like the internal communication around outbound. Kyle, I'll kick this first question your way. How do you look at like if we're making a big shift in the org and we want to move towards being more outbound oriented and we have people in seat that have not had traditionally have had to do it, let's say? How does that typically go?
Typically goes badly.
Yeah.
Especially if they're not opting into it. So this goes back to the principle in psychology called reactance. People hate to be forced to do stuff that they don't want to do. And if you have a team of inbound SDRs who you're now saying, oh, now you have to outbound, or same with AEs, it's probably not going to go that awesome unless you can create something new and exciting and people opt into and graduate into, and your best people, and they get paid more money and it's a higher status and they get to choose to be in this outbound thing, then it can go a lot better. But pattern I see more frequently is you actually just need new blood. Like oftentimes maybe one or two of your former inbound people can really make that pivot, but you're probably just going to have to bring in some like outbound veterans and just pay them more than what you think you'll have to pay for a BDR role in the longer term to convince them to take a lateral movement from somewhere else. You can spruce up the title a little bit. So it's not just BDR, it's senior BDR, principal BDR, BDR team lead. Like do what you got to do to attract that type of talent, but you probably need to seed that team with some new skills and energy, and then you can develop some organizational momentum. But it's like pretty difficult, and it needs like just like dedication.
Yeah, it's like the most real answer to this question of, yeah, if you're trying to move the organization towards outbound, you haven't done that. Most of the people are probably not going to like that, and it's probably not going to work out for a lot of the people too. Diana, this is something that when we were working with you guys, I thought that you did and people on your team and just really across the entire cohorts that we worked with, like the leadership participation in outbound in terms of not like you sitting there hammering the phones all day, but like actually showing up to the enablement sessions, participating in, talking with the frontline leaders around how they're like working in the training into the sessions. Can you speak a little bit to the leadership piece of the equation and the participation from a culture standpoint?
It's so important. I think through the first two cohorts, Jason, I was on almost every call because they have to see that you're willing to also, like, I can't tell you, both of you, that I'm the best messenger. Like, I don't write the best emails of all the SDRs on my team, but they have to see that I am also willing to go out and fail fast, fail forward, and do it with them. So I think like with our leaders, it was critical. We measured their attendance because if they're not on the call, they don't know how to go back and coach to it. And they don't know how to bring that concept of every week's topic into their team meetings, into their one-on-ones. And that pattern recognition is so critical to finding success. They can hear it once and they may do it, but they may not consistently be able to deliver that if there isn't that accountability piece there. So I think for managers, especially within my team, like I look to them on how these tools and these features are being adopted within their teams. And they're like solely responsible for creating that culture of success. And I also think like I push my managers to display to their teams, we may work for Shopify and the brand is well known, but every time we make a hire, my SDR leaders are outbounding into the field to find the best possible SDR. And I think to Kyle's point, when you have somebody who's not a great fit for your team, your manager owes it to that team of high performers to find somebody who's going to help them grow and level up and get better at their role. So our leaders are going out and sourcing top talent and showing them like, I'm also willing to put in the work, but my outbound and my outreach looks a little bit different than yours. So that's another way that I think our leaders show up for our people is using their function and keeping close to the craft.
I love that. I don't want to skip over that detail that you mentioned that your managers outbound to recruit other folks. I thought that was really cool.
So important. And they see them on LinkedIn doing it.
Doesn't really count as true outbounding. They should do that, and I agree. They need to make calls. Like your managers,
100%.
The expectation with your managers is they are doing the job with your reps, and they are every single month making the dials themselves. Even the director of this team makes like a significant number of dials and books ops every single month. Yes. And I think that if you want your team to be bought in and highly engaged and find credibility in your managers, they have to continue to do the job. And 95% of BDR managers do not do this. Most will say they do, and they do not. And so
most are not good at it either.
Yeah.
Most are not good. Like you want your AEs to self-source a lot of these companies, yet the last time the frontline leader for that AE made a call was like 6 years ago or something. Yeah. Like you just can't, it's such an unfair, it's like having a personal trainer that is not in shape.
I think I attended a cold call blitz a couple of weeks ago, and I joined this Google Hangout, and all the SDRs and AEs were in breakout rooms, and the coaches were sitting together having a conversation. And I was like, hold on a second, what is the value of this? Like, we're not driving value. Why aren't you on the call with the SDR? Why aren't you showing them what a great outbound call looks like? So it's not just the manager's responsibility to create the time for this to happen, but it's also to get into the weeds and do it with them. There's no value in a manager sitting on a Google Hangout listening to some cold calls without providing the feedback, without completing scorecards, without giving them tactical things to work on to get better, and then also showing up and doing the thing with them. It's so, so, so important.
My managers this week have made, so it's midway through Wednesday, 61, 54, 51, 45 calls apiece. And the director's made 41 calls. And he's off because he's getting married now. So it's 41 calls in 2 days. Yeah. Like, it's not a ton, but that's still like 40 more calls than I think 90%, 95% of the BDR managers listening have probably made this week.
This is like, if there was one thing that you really doubled down on, if you're trying to pivot your organization to be more outbound focused, and it was just like making sure the leaders rub shoulders with their reps, like that, it does so much for this, like for the morale and the culture and all that kind of good stuff. Let's keep moving. We got to move really fast, actually. So we won't get to spend as much time here on these last couple points, but there's a process component of this. And I think the main problem here is that, like, you have reps handling common situations for the first time every time they handle it. Like, if one of the plays is reaching out to closed lost customers, like, you should have a play for that. Like, there should be a starter email template for that. There should be a process around how you get, like, it should be well documented. So think about the things that you're asking the reps to do. And do you have playbooks for that? Do you have messaging? Do you have talk tracks? Do you have plays documented, et cetera? Enablement and reinforcement. I think a really big thing here that I want to spend a minute or two on is, I think people put a lot of pressure on enablement teams to be miracle workers, and enablement sessions in themselves don't create behavior change. It's just sharing of information. That's all it is. Like, the actual behavior change happens at the manager and rep level. What are your two thoughts on that? I feel like people sometimes feel like an enablement session is going to be the magic trick to help reps do things.
Good enablement can really move the needle, but most enablement leaders don't really know the craft or what they're doing, and it tends to fall flat. I think I'll answer two parts of this question. So enablement, the enablement programming you build needs to be active. There needs to be like a lot of practice and feedback and repetition for it to be good. We use this quadruple I framework. So we introduce the problem, which is just the boardroom session or pre-recorded videos. That's introducing, and that's where most people stop. Then the isolation is next. Isolation drills are practice reps. So we use a sales simulator called Avara for it. We can spin up like custom sims for any particular scenario that we want to practice. And so they'll go in and rip like 20, 30 Avara sims as isolation drills. And then they'll do that with their manager a bunch of times as like a last sort of isolation practice. And then they integrate that into the real world. So introduce, isolate, integrate. And integration is, okay, go do that in the wild. And then the fourth I is inspect. So go do it in the real world, bring those examples back of you trying that new skill with live fire prospects, and get expert feedback from your manager. If your enablement program looks like that, it will be highly effective. But that's, you can see how that's integrated with what managers are doing. It's not sort of in isolation. So that's how I would think about building high quality enablement programming. And then the other thing that's important here is just do one thing at a time. Here's the other piece that most managers get wrong and most enablement programs do wrong. What is the smallest component part of this skill you're trying to teach, and just focus on that. So don't teach a cold call. A cold call is like 12 different things. Yep. Just teach, are you teaching openers? Are you teaching offers of value? Are you teaching knee jerks and early interruptions? And I'm just going to do reps and reps and reps with progressive resistance in those isolation drills. If you can do those two things, have like a proper structure with isolation, integration, and inspection, because everybody just does introduce and then go. And you can focus on like one component part at a time, you'll have a lot of success.
Love it. Love that acronym too. Diana, anything else you would add? And then we got to take off here in a couple minutes.
No, I think Kyle nailed it. I love that acronym as well. I think everything that happens after the enablement session is actually where it comes to fruition on the calls. So making sure that your managers have the right systems to measure success, provide that feedback. But I think Kyle, like that one point, like we do an outbound moment of the week, where every week we focus on one element of making their outbound better, and then we measure against that. So it's, I think, that one thing, otherwise you're standing at the bottom of a mountain. And again, if they don't know what to do within 15 seconds, we have failed them. So give them the opportunity to make quick decisions that feel really simple.
Love it. Awesome. One more thing before we hop off. I'll drop 2 things into the chat. There's your slides. We're also offering free cold call audits right now. So if you're a sales leader, you have more than 20 reps, you can send me an email to jason@outboundsquad.com with the word audit, and we'll do like a quick like run through of your process, let you know where you can improve it, etc. So go make sure to check that out. The slides, I don't know if it's going to let all of you in there at the same time because we have a couple hundred people on here. Check that out in the chat. Diana, Kyle, thank you for coming on. Diana, where should people go to connect with you? Is Shopify hiring, like any of that kind of stuff?
We are always hiring. I'll drop my LinkedIn, always looking for the best in the business. I'm hiring on a leadership and on an IC level. So I'll drop my LinkedIn in the chat.
Cool. And I've worked firsthand with the Shopify crew, like awesome culture. So go make sure to check out Diana and connect with her and do some outbound. Okay. Don't just like apply through the job board thing, like send her a cold email or something. Kyle, what about you? Are you guys hiring? Where can people go to connect with you, follow you, all that good stuff?
Yeah, we're hiring SDRs and BDRs exclusively in Toronto, 5 days a week in office, right downtown. Yeah, lots of great things about Owner. We're pretty hardcore though, so it's not for the faint of heart. I try to be really honest and upfront about that. Like, we're going to push you pretty hard to be great, and that's not for everybody. So if you're down for in office and the culture and learning that it brings, and you want to do this on hard mode, hit me up on LinkedIn. Just you'll find me, Kyle Norton. It's easy.
And go make sure to check out his podcast as well. That's all we got, folks. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Diana. Thank you, everyone, for engaging. And that's all we got for you. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks
everyone.
for the invite. Bye, guys.
See ya.